Welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Routing Loop. I'm Matt Lewis, Senior Principal SA over here at AWS. We've got James Wenzel, the infamous AWS SA as well. Good to be back. I think I missed the last stream with you, Wenz, a couple of weeks ago, so good to be back on with you. Today we've got a really cool session, something that I'm very excited about because I always want to talk about visibility and observability, and we're going to dive into that today. So we're going to be doing a Chalk Talk. This is our Chalk Talk series on network monitoring and troubleshooting on AWS. We've got Victor and Nico here, both AWS SAs. Do you want to just give us a quick intro? Maybe we'll start with you, Nico, and then we'll go to Victor.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm a long-time fan of the show, and it's great to be with you today. I'm a principal SA here. I'm based in London. I work with FSI customers, and I have been with AWS for a little bit over 5 years now. My background is in telco. I think we'll have opportunities to delve into that later. But yeah, that's me. And my partner in crime is Victor.
Victor, tell us about yourself.
Thanks. So my name is Victor Babasomi. I'm a senior specialist solutions architect for networking. Been at AWS for a bit now, going to 7 years. And I have a keen interest in observability, just like Nico, and I'm glad to be here on the show.
So 7 years is a while in cloud terms or AWS terms. Do you remember how many services we had when you joined? Trick question, maybe.
Probably half of what we have now, but I don't know.
when I joined, it was 28. I remember specifically my manager when I joined said, "Hey, Matt, welcome aboard. There's 28 AWS services. I want you to learn each and every one of them intimately." And I was like,
I'm sure you complained because 28 were too many.
Yeah. And I think now with, so we're all AWS SAs here. I always think about the SA role as being someone who has 1 or 2 or maybe 3 areas of depth, like super deep areas. Nico, you've got someone trying to get into your room there.
Trying to break in.
Hey, what's up?
Clearly they didn't read my message.
It's all good. So AWS SAs generally have 1 or 2 areas of depth and areas of passion. But then I also think about knowing the whole ocean, but 1 inch deep. So we do touch across all of the 300, or I don't even know how many services we have, 300 plus services, a little bit, but there's areas that you folks dive in. So I know, Nico, you were saying that an area of passion for you is monitoring and observability. Tell us a little bit more about that. That seems like an interesting area to dive into. What spurred that passion?
Yeah, this is something that my networking colleagues often make fun of me for. And there's an anecdote from my old days in my telco career before I joined. I remember vividly, I think it was a Friday night. My partner and I had tickets to go to a concert. And, back then I was responsible for the voice connectivity of a big telco here in the UK. And I was ready. I'm a big 80s and 90s music geek. So I had tickets for the Tears for Fears. I was ready to go to the office. And as soon as I stepped my foot outside the office, I got a page. And I'm like, no, this can't be happening right now, right? So turns out I couldn't see them. I couldn't go to the concert, and turns out it was something that I could have totally prevented if I had the appropriate monitoring and visibility in place, because it's an issue that was building up. It had been building up for a number of days, and nobody was aware. I'm like, if only I had paid some attention to those signals, I wouldn't be here crying over the lost money on a concert ticket.
I hear you. I remember in my telco days writing a change for our operations team and then going to bed at 9 p.m. and then hoping I sleep through the night, and then my phone rings, pager goes off, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and you just know what's waiting for you. So I feel you in wanting to know what's going on in the network, wanting to understand where packet flows are going, and understanding what you're actually working on and dealing with. I think that's such an important thing because there are mechanisms on premises like NetFlow and SMP OIDs you can poll, and you can get a fair amount of data. But then I've heard from customers that when you come to AWS, they think that it's more like a black box, like, hey, it's as a service and things just operate. And I think that's not the case at all, right? I mean, Victor, you're nodding your head. Like, tell us about your thoughts on that. I'm sure you deal with customers all the time who have that same kind of mindset, right?
Well, yeah, 100%. I've seen customers who would run into issues and they would spend a long time like trying to like deep dive on it on the application, and not worry about checking what's on the AWS network because they feel like it's a black box to them. So, for example, I remember working with this customer who they're a big financial services customer, and they were having issues with applications communication between different regions. And so like they were, diving into this, trying to understand what's going on and, reaching out to the AWS folks to clarify, hey, does AWS have an issue? Because we don't know, like everything looks good on our side, but we can't see anything on the AWS side. And I was like, hey, have you heard of a tool called, Network Manager Infrastructure Performance? Because that's a great way for you to like see, what's going on the AWS backbone across different regions. And they were like, oh, okay, we didn't know this existed. And they looked up and were able to like get like details or, packet loss and latency and all of that kind of stuff. And that's now something that they have, as part of like their dashboards today. So to your point, yeah, like a lot of folks don't know about the tools that AWS provides to give them visibility into our infrastructure, but there's so many tools and we're happy to like talk about them today.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Jamie, anything you want to add before we start digging into some content here?
Yeah, the one thing that kind of resonates that you were mentioning, well, especially Nico with the concert view paging, like I can't stress enough how important the message that Victor and Nico have today. How many birthdays do you want to miss, or anniversaries that you have to tell your significant other that hold on a second, I'll just be on the phone for just 1 minute. So yeah, just to bring it home. This is important, and there definitely is a path that Victor and Nico are going to show us.
Yeah, I guess
said that, Jamie. It's my daughter's first birthday tomorrow, and I really don't want to miss that. I already had a meeting.
Yeah, hopefully you have enough monitoring in place.
Yeah, hopefully. Someone set up a meeting from 3 till 6 or something tomorrow, and I'm like, I don't think so. I'm going to be out. But yes, monitoring for sure. So you were going to say something, Nico. Go for it.
No, I was saying that it's not just about us, right? It's also about our customers and our end customers. That, and in many cases we can prevent end customers having any issues or suffering problems. If we have enough early signals about the behavior of our network. Especially, I remember the most time-consuming thing is finding out where the problem is. You might know what the problem is, but not where it is. And that is super time-consuming. And I think some of the latest announcements of some of our services go exactly in that direction. So really helping pinpointing where the problem lies quicker than previously.
Well, Tech First, a longtime viewer of the show, I guess is kicking us off with one of the first questions and maybe can help us start the session. They know that there are different tools for AWS network monitoring, but are kind of confused as to use what and when. And they're kind of hoping to get from this session that a little more clarity, which I know is going to be the case.
Looks like we've got Dominic on there asking about if we're going to be talking about Amazon Q. Maybe, I don't know. We could talk about Amazon Q a little bit, I think.
Yeah, actually, we will. We'll touch on a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Well, should we get rolling with some? I think we've got some slides and we've got a whiteboard up as well. Do you want to start with the slides and we'll get rolling here?
We promise it's not going to be death by PowerPoint.
Oh, you're talking to the PowerPoint master over here. I'll be the instigator of death by PowerPoint all day long.
You have a reputation, Matt. You have a reputation.
Too many slides always.
Right. For those who don't know, I think this routing loop series, it's about some of the sessions we had at reInvent last year, and Victor and I were on stage talking about exactly this topic. By the way, I heard some of your guests talking about how much they love Chalk Talks in the past, and I can only but plus one that sentiment. It was super fun being with the audience, get all the weird questions thrown at us, and sing the proverbial, I don't know, I'll have to dig that out and we'll get back to you on that. It's half of the job of the essay is being able to say, I don't know where you don't know things. As I said in my little anecdote at the beginning, everything fails all the time. Werner says it publicly in every time he gives a public talk, and this is what happened to me, and I'm sure it happened to many of you. And this is today, we hopefully are going to give you some pointers to try to not prevent things from failing, because we won't be able to do that, but at least get early signals so you can mitigate for those failures. So let's try to fit your the typical cloud networking setup on one slide. And we'll take bets on whether or not we can do that. So we'll probably start with 1 or 2 accounts across 2 AWS regions and many VPCs connected with Transit Gateway. In those VPCs, you may have AKS clusters, network firewalls for inspection. You connect them with on-premises using Direct Connect Gateway or VPNs. You have NAT gateways deployed, load balancers, interface endpoints, and yada yada. It doesn't stop, and it could be even more complicated than this. What we're trying to do today is show you the tools that you have in your toolbox to be able to get a grip on everything that you see on the slide, and anything else you might want to add to an architecture like this. You see here we have a few things like flow logs that we will talk about later, and other visibility tools that we will also show you in the console in a little while. So the takeaway from the slide is that never mind how complicated your design and your architecture, the principles that we encourage you to follow aren't any different. Yeah, so we will go through them as we go, as we talk in this show today. And I think what I would like to start with is understanding really what the tools are in your toolbox and how you can visualize the data that all these tools produce and publish on things like CloudWatch logs. So Victor has that view in the next slide.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about some of the tools that you have in your toolbox to monitor and troubleshoot your network in AWS. And while I talk about them broadly, feel free to comment with your questions and anything in particular that you want to know more about. So Nico just ran us through a couple of services and an architecture of how all the services could work together. And when you're thinking about monitoring and troubleshooting, you want to gather telemetry, from all of the services. And when you gather all of that telemetry data, you want to store them somewhere. And just having them stored isn't just enough. You want to be able to extract insights from the data that you've stored. And so you want to think about the tools that are going to help you to analyze and visualize all of that data, and also take remediation actions, to resolve those issues. So let's talk about those telemetry sources real quick. So CloudTrail, I know that's not a typical networking service, but CloudTrail is, a great service that helps track all the API calls you make into your AWS services, telling you who made those calls, when those calls happened. And it's particularly important when you're making those API calls against networking resources. So it can help you get those insights. Amazon CloudWatch. If you've been paying attention to Amazon CloudWatch, you would see that we've been putting in a lot of really great tools in there for network monitoring. Tools like Flow Monitor, Internet Monitor, and Synthetic Monitor. And you have Flow Monitor that basically helps give you insights on your network performance for traffic between your EC2 instances, EKS clusters, also to Amazon services like S3 and DynamoDB. It gives you those insights based off your actual application traffic. And then you have Internet Monitor that gives you visibility into how internet issues affects the performance and availability of your applications hosted on AWS. And we have Synthetic Monitor as well for those of you who have hybrid networks and you want to monitor the performance between your AWS network as well, your AWS network with your on-premise network. And Synthetic Monitor gives you that visibility. And then we have Network Manager Infrastructure Performance that gives you insights on what's happening on the AWS infrastructure. All of our services emit CloudWatch metrics, and I have EC2 listed here. And that's because from a networking perspective, there are really cool network metrics that you can pull from your instances. So for example, you want to know if you're exceeding the bandwidth for your instance, or you want to know if you're exceeding the packets per second allowance for your instance. Those are really cool metrics that you can get from your instances that can help you to dive deep into performance issues that you might be having. And also, all our services emit logs like VPC flow logs. Our DNS service Route53 emits logs, ELB emits logs, Network Firewall emits logs. All our services, they all emit useful logs that you can dive into to diagnose issues. And there's so many more of them. Now, moving to storage, all of the metrics that you're emitting, they go to CloudWatch metrics. For your logs, you can send them to CloudWatch logs. CloudWatch being our monitoring solution, and it has a lot of cool features and tools that we'll talk about very soon. You could also send them to S3 as well as you can stream them through Kinesis to your third-party monitoring solution. So if you have, some of those partner monitoring solutions in your company today, you can stream them using Kinesis. And then when you have this data stored, the next step would be to extract actual insights from that data. And so we have a tool, CloudWatch Metric Filter, which can help you get metrics from your logs. And I think that's a very powerful, tool to have in your toolbox. We also have something like the CloudWatch Contributor Insights. So if you're ever thinking about an easy way to look at the top talkers, for example, in your logs, or the top contributors in your logs, that's a great tool to make use of. And in fact, it comes with some queries, and it comes with some queries that you can use out of the box. So like if you're not sure how to set up those contributor insights rules, you can just use sample rules out of the box to start giving you immediate insights. And we have CloudWatch Logs Insight that you can use for analyzing your logs. We have Athena that you can use to directly query the data you have in S3. And then from a visualization perspective, depending on what your existing tools are or what your preference is, there are a bunch of options you have, whether you're using Grafana or QuickSight, or you're using a tool like Network Manager, which is a really great tool to visualize your entire global network on AWS. And then, again, going back to CloudWatch, which is our monitoring solution, you can build powerful dashboards that can give you insights into your infrastructure. You can have your metrics on these dashboards. You can have outputs of your queries from CloudWatch Logs Insights in this dashboard. You can have outputs from your CloudWatch Contributor Insight rules on these dashboards. It can be, as verbose as you want it to be. And one cool thing as well is that you can integrate CloudWatch with OpenSearch. So you can actually have OpenSearch dashboards that are based off the data that you have in CloudWatch. And there are some out-of-the-box dashboards in OpenSearch for things like VPC flow logs and WAF logs that you can spin up and just use to start getting insights into your infrastructure from the get-go. And then based off all of that, if you want to take remedial actions, you can use some of our automation tools like EventBridge and Lambda to take actions. And then one more thing I'm going to talk about are diagnostic tools that you can also use when you run into an issue. And I'm just going to run through a couple of them here. VPC traffic mirroring. That's a great tool that you can use to copy network traffic, actual network traffic, going to your network interfaces to monitoring appliance for you to get deep visibility into what's actually happening. And I think that that's great for those of us who are trying to do like deep packet inspection into our traffic. And then VPC flow logs, I spoke about that earlier. VPC reachability analyzer, another really great tool that can help to analyze your configurations on AWS. So for example, if you have multiple networks or multiple VPCs that need to communicate across to each other, and you have transit gateways, you have security groups, NACLs, and all of these things, and you have instances in these VPCs that are trying to talk to one another, and for some reason they are failing to communicate with one another, they're failing to connect, you can actually use this tool to help you to see what is the cause of the issue if it's something that's due to your configurations. And so it's a really powerful way to just quickly analyze all of your configurations to see what is potentially causing an issue in your infrastructure. And then we have network access analyzer, another great tool that helps you to see if there is like any unintended network access in your infrastructure. So for example, if you have your network and you want to make sure that no one from the internet can access your network, and you have put all of the required policies in place, and you want to actually validate if it's actually the case that no one from the internet can access your network, then you can use network access analyzer. You can create like rules there to check and give you findings if there is any unintended network access. And then one more thing, because like I said, I promised earlier that we're going to touch on Amazon Q. Amazon Q is also something that can also aid you with your network troubleshooting. And so you can put your natural language queries in there. For example, if you are unable to SSH into your instance, as an example, you can put it in there, put the instance ID in there, and Amazon Q can translate that and run reachability analyzer tests and tell you if there's a configuration issue that's preventing that from happening.
Hey, Victor, we got a question here from Dominic, another longtime viewer of the show. Hey, Dominic, what would you recommend to you to be able to use, analyze, and visualize VPC flow logs in a matter of minutes? I think you're kind of getting into some of that there. Can you help connect the dots for Dominic?
Yeah, sure. Dominic, thanks for that question. So in a matter of minutes, one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that OpenSearch actually has an integration with CloudWatch data today. So if you have your logs being sent to CloudWatch logs, you can pretty much out of the box set up an OpenSearch dashboard for VPC flow logs and have that visualization for your flow logs. So that's one. Also, if you have your logs going to S3, you can run queries against those flow logs using Amazon Athena. So that's another way you can run queries against them. You would have to use SQL as well to do the analysis. So you would have to have some knowledge of SQL. And also, again, if you're sending your logs to CloudWatch logs, besides the dashboards that I mentioned earlier on, I touched on a couple of tools. I touched on Amazon CloudWatch Logs Insights and CloudWatch Contributor Insights. So Amazon CloudWatch Logs Insights, you can run queries against your VPC flow logs in CloudWatch. And there are some sample queries in CloudWatch that you can use to get started in a matter of minutes. Same thing too with CloudWatch Contributor Insights. There are a couple of sample rules there as well that you can use in a matter of minutes to get the top talkers for your flow logs. And I wonder, Nico, do you maybe have like something in your demo that can show this?
Yeah.
All right. You're teeing Nico up perfectly here.
Yeah, there we are.
Yeah.
There you go. If you can switch to my screen share, perfect.
There we go. Let's check it out.
So, you know, it sounds like this was agreed before the show, but believe us, it wasn't. So, on screen you have login sites open, and I used pre-made query, one of our sample queries. If you go on the right-hand side, and you go to flow logs, you see some sample queries that you can apply immediately to the query part here. And you can select run query, and then you have the metric and the output of that insight ready on screen. And this took me less than a minute. So Dominic, I think that we're ticking the boxes there. Also on CloudWatch Insights, let me go to my tab there. I created these two rules. The rule is fundamental construct of contributor insights, and the rule basically tells the contributor insight service what it should aggregate on. In this case, I have my top talkers in my VPC. And again, this is reading all data from VPC flow logs. So this is the source of data. Or this other rule here that I have on screen. I don't have a lot of data points because I have a very limited capability to hit my service with test traffic, but this basically shows the top 10 talkers with a reject action logged in the flow logs. So this is sources that are sending traffic to my load balancer, in this case, that something like knuckles or security groups are rejecting, maybe on a port that isn't the port that the security group is allowing, and so on and so forth. So we have, in this case, the top 10 offenders, shall we say. But then you can create other rules, and there are samples for quite a number of our services, including flow logs. So Dominic, I hope this answers your question.
I think I'm not using flow logs enough. This is great.
It is cool. Dominic has another follow-up question. The flow logs of what you're using, are you using the default keys, or are you using any?
Yes, default. Yeah, I just click through in the console. I didn't customize anything.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, I think the trouble with when I'm building like a proof of concept, or whether I'm playing around with a feature or something like that, getting meaningful traffic that actually shows reasonable things is always tough. Maybe we can do a session on that at some point, how you would generate test traffic through a test infrastructure to say, hey, now we're actually seeing the things that I'm sending, right? That would be kind of cool.
I can send Matt down a spiral asking him, would he use iPerf1 or iPerf2?
Actually, I have a question for the audience on iPerf, and I don't know if this is true or not. So iPerf2 multi-threaded, and so it's not pinned to a single core. iPerf3 single-threaded, pinned to a single core. And when you're using iPerf3, you'd only get a certain amount of throughput, and you'd see one of the CPU cores thrash. This is what Jamie wanted me to talk about. But my question is, I was recently doing some testing with a new version of iPerf3, and it seemed to be multi-threaded. And so I don't know, I didn't check the release notes, and I got dragged onto something else, but is the new version of iPerf3 now multi-threaded? I don't know. Maybe someone in the audience knows.
Is the question,
Ask Gen AI.
Yeah. And then it'll probably hallucinate about.
Give us a wrong answer.
But one might be the right answer.
So, sorry, guys. I think there was a great question earlier on about which tool I use to monitor things. Can I take that? I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think that one of the things you'll know that is that there isn't a silver bullet, right? There isn't one service that solves all problems, that gives you monitoring to everything and anything in your network. So I think that rather than starting from the tool, I would start from scenarios. What things are you trying to protect your customers from? Are you worried about internal networking issues between instances? Are you worried about internet weather? Are you worried about TCP stack optimization? Are you worried about malicious access attempts? So I think that rather than, again, focusing on which tool I use to monitor everything, we should start talking about what are the risks and what are really the things that matter, and sorting them in a decreasing order and start working from the top, right? So what is the number one thing that I want to protect myself against? What is the number one thing that keeps me awake at night? and then
I have an off-the-cuff
we might able
question.
to.
Yeah, like maybe an off-the-cuff scenario. What about someone who just got a large bill from AWS, a lot of data transfer, and then their financial folks are like, "Hey, like you folks need to fix this thing," and they're like, "I don't know what this is." What do you think the right steps would be in that scenario?
Now, were you on my previous call?
I wasn't, but I know all four of us take this call a lot. So.
I know.
Victor, you wanna take that?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, I think that's a good question. I have seen a lot of customers who, for example, they get a huge bill on their that gateway data processing cost, and they're like, why? Like, who is responsible for all of these data processing costs? And the tool that I think Nico demoed contributor insights earlier. So looking at your VPC flow logs, for example, looking at VPC flow logs as an example, you can use contributor insights to see what the top talkers are. So you can see which instances, which IP addresses are responsible for the vast majority of that data, right? And so that's going to be like a quick and easy tool for you to check what's happening with your flow logs. Yeah, so that's going to be one way. If you have your logs on S3, then you can use Athena to query those logs as well.
I've got a question actually for either Victor or for Nico. Victor, you were mentioning in your previous slide deck, you were showing all the different services and how they all have their own logging mechanisms, right? So if we're picking like VPC flow logs, for instance, or if we're picking another service that actually like EC2 has its own networking, and Nico just commented like, hey, you need to know what you want to log. So we have like two different vectors here of like all these things that have their own types of logging. Plus then you also have that cuts across like, I need to know something across my environment. What kind of recommendation do either of you give to help figure that out?
Yeah, it's such a great point. It's like, if you allow me to make an analogy, it's like when you buy a new car, right? So when you buy a new car, you need to be aware of all the indicators on your cockpit, right? So when the I don't know, your exhaust has an issue, or where the battery has an issue, then the light comes up. So whenever you adopt a new service, I would spend 5-10 minutes looking at the CloudWatch metrics and logs that service generates. Whatever service that is, EKS, CCS, any service generates telemetry. So be aware of what telemetry that service generates. And I'm not suggesting you should look at all of the telemetry, but at least be aware of what is possible, so you know what to focus on initially in the first place. I think it's such an important point that it's often overlooked. And whenever I talk to customers about this, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know EC2 reported that metric. I didn't know I could look at, I don't know, exceeded PPS." And another super cool thing about CloudWatch logs is that any metric in CloudWatch logs, you can apply anomaly detection to it, whatever metric that is, right? Even like custom metrics that you create for your on-premises workloads. And after a while, CloudWatch logs says, well, in the last 10 minutes, I've observed an anomaly on this metric, fire an alert. That's so cool, right? You don't even have to know what is an anomaly, because CloudWatch logs will figure that out for you. I think it's something that if you told me back in the day, 10 years ago, I would have said, what? Is that the thing?
Unbelievable. So you mean to tell me that before we use something, we should read the instructions? That's crazy talk. We're all technologists here. We don't do any of
that. I do like the car analogy, though. My car does not have an indicator for when the charge port is open. And 2 days ago, I reversed out of my garage and broke the charge port off the car. So I feel like that's like, to relate it to what we're talking about here, something's going on in the background and you just have no idea what's happening, right? I mean, you don't get an alert that this charge port's open and then it breaks. Hey, I'll a bit of a side comment. I noticed, Victor, when you had all of the services listed up earlier, CloudWatch Flow Monitor was one of those. I'm actually really excited about that one. It's the one where we've actually deployed an agent on Amazon Linux hosts, and that gives us a whole bunch of extra ability to take details around packet flows. Yeah, this looks great. I mean, I feel like there's a bunch of stuff we could do with this to get more telemetry data. And I think what's happened in the past is folks will use things like ETH-Tool and maybe push stats via Prometheus to Grafana or something. And there's only so many stats that are available on ETH-Tool because we're actually pulling them directly from a network adapter where there's a really finite amount of memory and finite amount of a CPU that we can dedicate to those processes. Whereas having an agent, I think there's a whole bunch of extra stuff we could do, right? Think of it like an eBPF agent where we're taking packets and passing them through, and then we can build upon that to get additional telemetry data in the future. But yeah, do you folks want to talk about this one? I mean, this was a reInvent launch late last year, so I'm not sure if many folks have actually seen it.
We're not actually taking packets with that eBPF program. We're just communicating with the kernel and getting socket statistics. So it is not actually in the data plane. We're just getting TCP statistics like retransmissions, round trip time, and things like that. And then we send them to a massive data lake, and we match the data for you. And then we display it in the console or via the usual methods.
So
here on the screen, I have
what kind of stats would someone expect to get from this one?
Yeah, you get things like data transferred, retransmissions, and retransmission timeouts on your TCP traffic. But the cool thing is that for any flow that suffers from any of these impairments like retransmissions or timeouts, in this case, you see I have no timeouts, I just have a few retransmissions, you can highlight that flow, and we basically reconstruct the whole end-to-end path between the source and the destination of that flow. So you can see what are the intermediate steps, and you can go and investigate why that could have been the case. Maybe it's an overwhelmed, third-party IDS, IPS appliance, or an EC2 instance that is over its limits, and similar issues. But I think reconstructing the topology is super useful when you have an issue.
I have a question, or maybe a scenario. I was talking to a customer, and maybe this works for this scenario, maybe it doesn't. So tell me if that's the case or not. Customer had some instances deployed in our UK region. They were talking to our North Virginia region, and they were seeing a whole bunch of latency, and they didn't know what was going on. It took us a whole bunch of time to go through everything step by step. Routing was sending traffic over a direct connect they had provisioned, going on premises via a WAN that they had, which was a super low bandwidth WAN connection between two data centers they had, and then tromboning back up into the North Virginia region. What they wanted to do was go via peering. In this case, do you think this would have found that problem, or?
Not necessarily. I think probably reachability analyzer is what I would have used, at least to see whether, if you were pairing that source with that destination, what is that actual path that the packet would have taken? And also pairing that with network monitor infrastructure performance to align the observed overall latency to the actual inter-region latency between the two regions. If the customers was seeing 200 or 500 milliseconds and the actual measure that we gave through infrastructure performance is 150, just for argument's sake, we would have known that there is a mismatch, like, that there is something that doesn't compute.
Right. Yeah, I think that's actually a super powerful tool, network infrastructure. Infrastructure monitor, is that NIM?
It's Network Manager Infrastructure Performance.
Manager Infrastructure Performance. Okay, I'll try and remember that one. But giving a baseline on what customers can expect between our availability zones and between our regions, I think that's super powerful. Do you have it here on the in the console? Are you able to bring it up?
Let me have a look. I don't think I do, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I know the naming on our CloudWatch services is a little, I won't say crazy, but it.
Well, at least it doesn't all have gateway on the end of it.
That's true. Well, we're responsible for that, Jamie. We love putting gateways on everything.
I know. We do have a couple of questions, though. I was trying to bring them up, and then more questions are coming in. So I apologize for covering your face, Matt. So I'll let you guys answer, and then I want to get
No
to
apology needed.
Dominic and Tech after this. Oh,
Okay, so we're in Network Manager, Infrastructure Performance, and we can see, what are we seeing here? Different.
So here you see all the permutations between source and destination regions, and you see that I haven't subscribed to any of these metric feeds. All you have to do is basically select the pair of regions you want to observe performance for, like, sorry, I just did it. And after a while, you start seeing all the, sorry, I didn't do it on this account here, but you would start observing graphs related to latency and the health status of the connectivity between those two regions. And that is often very useful, right? Because in the case you were just making, Matt, about your customer observing an observed amount of latency.
Yeah.
Again, you see the actual measurement.
Yeah, the first thing they would do is say, hey, there's something wrong with your peering connection. I'm seeing 500 milliseconds. And we could go to this tool and say, well, actually, it should be around about 150 or something. Exactly. Yeah. Very cool. Okay.
Yeah. Could you select what you just did and scroll down, like the checkbox? One of the checkboxes for the pair of regions.
This one.
Yeah, on the data visualization.
Yeah.
Okay, and scroll down.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so you can see the latency and all that stuff.
Okay, so EU North 1, EU West 2, and we're seeing 30 milliseconds of latency pretty consistently. Gotcha. I know, Jamie, you were going to bring up some questions, but Ken just asked a question.
Yeah, I saw it too. Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, you want to bring it up?
I'll bring it up. Go ahead and read it off. All right, so Ken said I'll read it off. So Ken says he joins a bit late. And he's wondering what you're showing here now, does it show latency between local zones and associated regions and local zones, or is this just regions only? Like how can you see the local zone latency between the region and the actual local zone itself?
From memory, I don't think infrastructure performance covers local zones, but I could be wrong. I don't remember. I don't know if you remember, Victor. Maybe it's something for a quick search.
Yeah, I think what might be an interesting way to do it is to use network, the synthetic monitor, and monitor an IP address of an instance in a local zone from your region, and that would give you the latency. So that would be how I would do it with the synthetic monitoring topology. To answer your question, Ken.
Shall we, since you mentioned it, Victor, shall we spend a minute on synthetic monitor?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
You know, it's my favorite service. So.
I know, you love it.
Just one. I just want to make one quick comment before that. So Vishal had asked if this video is being broadcast live. It is. So if you do have a question, please just ask it. We'll catch it and we'll bring it up on screen. Okay, go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
No. So synthetic monitor. We went through a couple of renamings of that service. So you may know this as network monitor, and that was renamed as network synthetic monitor after flow monitor was introduced late last year. So synthetic monitor is fundamentally a tool that allows you to send synthetic traffic from a subnet to a destination with 3 protocol types: ICMP, TCP, and UDP. And that monitor and the probes that are part of that monitor synthesize and send traffic from the subnets where they are deployed to the destination. In this case, I have Pod 8. I know it's not particularly meaningful, but it was just to show something on the console here. Ideally, this would be an IP address that you care about, right? Your on-premises router or your on-premises DNS or something that is placed in a point where you actually care about in your network infrastructure. So what this tool does, again, as I said, it sends synthetic traffic out. Maybe in the case of TCP, it measures the three-way handshake, and it derives measures like packet loss and round trip time. Yeah. So as you can see here, I have a monitor from 2 subnets in a VPC, and I see I have, thankfully, 0% packet loss and a variable amount, not very variable, but it's fairly consistent level of round trip time. I think that's what's more interesting about this service is that it provides another metric, which is a binary metric. It's called the NHI, or Network Health Indicator. And the Network Health Indicator indicates on whether or not the AWS networking underpinning the path that the probe traffic is taking is healthy or not. What this does is that, especially when you're monitoring on-premises infrastructure across a direct connector instance, I think we've all been there. There's a problem, there's packet loss. Is it the AWS network or is it our network? Where should we be focusing on? Should we raise a support case? And by the way, my heartfelt suggestion is always raise a support case if in doubt. But knowing that AWS potentially has an issue, it's a massive, help whenever there's an impairment, right? Because you can be confident, like, oh, AWS is aware that there's an issue there. Maybe let's open a support case just to make sure that they're aware of it and that we're impacted. And let them work on it, right? So the end-to-end path is restored. But if there's an issue and the AWS network health indicator is healthy, it's very likely that the issue is on the customer side. So the customer knows it's probably something on my part of the network. And this is something that it's probably, in my view, it's one of the features that has the highest value in the service, besides packet loss and round trip time.
Yeah, and just to add to what you said, so to Ken's question, you can have probes set up in Synthetic Monitor to IP addresses of your instances in your local zone. And Tech First, I think also to contribute to the additional information that Tech First added to Ken's question. So with this, pretty much, if you're doing this to your direct connect IP address, like for example, an on-prem IP address that is reachable over your direct connect, using Synthetic Monitor doesn't just give you the latency to that IP address as well as packet loss. In addition, it also tells you, is this something that's coming from outside of the direct connect, or is this something that's coming from your network? And it makes it easier for you to just do your troubleshooting.
Finally, we jump into the whiteboard.
Yeah, I saw there was a question in the channel about where the measurement is taken from. Hopefully, you can all see the whiteboard. So, as I said, and Dominic will answer your question in a bit. When you deploy a probe as part of a monitor in your VPC, that creates ENIs in your subnets. Let me draw them up. And it will start sending traffic from those ENIs to whichever destination you've selected. So if we consider a Direct Connect POP, as you know, in a Direct Connect POP, you have an AWS router. Yeah, let me fix that. An AWS router. And maybe your router. Yeah, if you have a presence in that POP. So if you really want to measure the latency between your subnets in the availability zones that you're using in that region to your router in the DX POP, all you have to do is configure something like a loopback on this router and use that as a destination for your probes. The other thing that you can do that I think is super interesting, let's say that this is your data center, and let me do it in green so that we see it's a different thing. You may have another router here, yeah, where you're connecting to your, I don't know, your Metrolinks or your WAN to the DX POP. And what you can do is configure another loop back here and configure another probe with this as a destination. And what you can do with this is you can measure the latency between this and this with a simple subtraction, right? So let's say this is 50 milliseconds and this is 70. It's very likely that this is 20, yeah? So you can get very creative with synthetic monitor, and it's a very flexible tool because it allows you to monitor all sorts of patterns. Hopefully that answers your the question.
I mean, I think this is amazing for folks that have a DX already, for latency between regions and DX POPs when thinking about choosing a DX POP. I think that's probably reach out to your account team territory, right? And we can provide that detail. But to figure out this kind of latency, the synthetic monitor sounds amazing. This is great.
Also, let's say that you're relying on a third party to provide you this connectivity between your data center and the XPOP, and you're experiencing packet loss. And if you measure no packet loss whatsoever to the first stop and you're seeing packet loss to the second, it's very likely that the packet loss is occurring in this section of your path. Were there any other questions in the stream?
Yeah, so I've got one. But not from the stream directly, but although there is one comment that there is. I always love this comment. There's no place like home. You got to bring it up. But here's
good T-shirt slogan.
Yeah, exactly. Within this scenario, is there any way to like, or how would you go about, say, putting up a monitor for a variance between the two? Would you be able to set up something like, okay, we've got 50 milliseconds and I've got 70. When they get too far apart, can I alert on that and say, okay, I probably have an issue with my provider? Like, as you mentioned, you have your customer in the DX POP, but that could also be the provider that's giving you DX, or you could have a hosted connection. And when there's something that's not in your control, you can put in your control the ability to monitor both sides, set the variance between the two, and then alert on it, maybe sending an email, or like what would be your recommended course of action if you, Nico, were the one that's in control of this and your butt's on the line?
Yeah, exactly that. You create a metric that is a subtraction of the two metrics, and you create a CloudWatch alert for that calculated metric. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So I was right for a change.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily data centers aren't really moving around, but if there's a misconfiguration somewhere and someone starts taking a different path,
or I'm thinking somebody has like MPLS between the two, right? There's some variances that you can have that can cause some latencies. Yeah. We've seen that quite a bit, being on calls where, as it was brought up, I think, Victor, you brought it up earlier, sometimes it's just hard to determine where the fault is, right? And then when you start bringing in DX and you have partners involved, now you have like how many different places you can point a finger to. So being very prescriptive in what you want to know, as you guys had mentioned earlier, as well as having a plan and knowing the capabilities of all the different services to give you the information that you want to know, it's probably a good idea to kind of map that all out before you take charge of a network that possibly spans the globe. And if one wrong thing goes, you miss your daughter's first birthday.
I hope not.
We definitely hope not.
I do want to call that Tech Versus comment on Excalidraw. Nico, you'd introduced that to me yesterday. I'd never seen it before either, but I might start using this tool. It seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the look and feel of it. Yeah. It looks like an actual board.
A chalkboard, yeah. For us, who knows what that smells like.
Do schools have chalkboards still, or are they whiteboards these days?
I think they're all whiteboards.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all electronic as far as I saw with my daughter.
I think I saw a YouTube documentary. Yeah, there was a isn't there like a Japanese chalk brand that's super coveted in the
I saw that too.
you know,
Yeah, that's pretty
math
cool. They have that
PhD
in pink.
circles? It's like a
It doesn't make
specific type of chalk that
Yeah.
was being made or something. Yeah.
For
Anyway.
mathematicians. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, should we keep moving on here? What else? Where do you guys want to dive into next?
We have 4 minutes.
Oh, we got 4 minutes. Time flies.
Wow.
I thought we had 14. There you go. Well, I guess with 4 minutes left, we never go over. So, any closing thoughts? Maybe Victor, will start with you, and then Nico. And what are your thoughts to anyone who's thinking about building observability and visibility and using these tools that you folks have been talking about today?
Okay. From my perspective, I'll say it's really important to be proactive about this as opposed to being reactive. So, if I was to leave anything with you all, it will be that you should think about monitoring your priority workloads, your critical workloads, your production workloads. Think about what is important for you to monitor. Create dashboards for all of those things. Set alarms for metrics that you care about, and also like familiarize yourself with the observability tools that we provide to customers today. Because like there's so many things that you can see on AWS that you don't even need to open a support case to get those insights. Like, there's so much visibility that you have, and we are continuing to make this even better. So like familiarize yourself with the tools that we have on CloudWatch, like Internet Monitor, Flow Monitor, Synthetic Monitor. Get used to using those tools today for your infrastructure. And, as always, if all else fails, you can always reach out to support to help you.
Okay, I think that's definitely fair. Nico, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think there is one thing that since I joined Amazon, I've come to really admire, and it's something that I talk to everyone I know. It's our COE process, correction of error processes, which is some people will call it an RCA or other ways, but it's a process that we start whenever we have a significant customer-facing issue. And whenever anything like that happens, we spend significant time, and there's leadership involved and all sorts of mechanisms, as we call them internally, to take actions for such an issue not to happen anymore. And I think that when network visibility monitoring is at play, whenever you have an issue, don't just despair about having had an issue. Spend some time trying to find out what you could have done to prevent that issue from occurring. And hopefully with time, you will build enough visibility so that your issues will not happen. Well, you will know that those issues are happening a lot sooner, so you can remediate them a lot faster. So I think that's super important. Just learn from your mistakes, because no one is immune from mistakes. I don't know about you, but I've done so many. And yeah, make sure that you learn from those. I think that's the thing.
Plus one for that. Human
definitely.
error is always something that comes into play. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Jamie, you want to take us out?
Yeah. I want everyone who's watching to understand that we appreciate you. Thank you for bringing your questions. I was having a little bit of fun there with Vishal. Yeah, we are definitely live. But also, if you want to find out the shows that are going to be upcoming for our new season or new specials, or they're coming in after we're done with the reInvent, please go to theroutingloop.net. You can go there, see the host, look at the previous episodes. You'll get a recording of this awesome episode that Victor and Nico had presented for us, and you can use that for your, for anything that you need going forward. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
And we'd always love more time.
Always love more
We
time.
just have to talk faster, but that never happens. We always have stuff to talk about, so it's always fun. Thanks, everyone.